All right, let's look at data and media inaccuracies. Greenspan was on CNBC. There's the link to Zero Hedge. I'm not going to link it in the description, but you can go and you can pull it up. It's actually one of the more recent posts if you're watching this video the day that it was produced. Okay, so you can play the video. I pulled out some of his quotes that I thought were very interesting, and he highlights one of the problems. For the most part, it is accurate what he's saying, but the reason why there's some data and media inaccuracies is because why? What's led to this? So what did he say? The basic reason why the economy is not growing, I'm, by the way, added the growing, but we're talking about why the economy is not really growing. Unemployment may be lower, but the economy is not growing anymore. Is if you look at the data, is a shortfall in long-term capital investments. And he goes on to say there's a very wide variance on long-term capital expectations. Think about that, okay? Variance is just, what's going on, like how wide, okay? Short variance would be a good thing. That means it's pretty steady. Wide variance means there's people on opposite sides, really crazy. Okay. Then he goes on to say nobody wants to invest in the very long term. By the way, he's right on the money about one thing. This is more true than ever. Well, one of the things he points out is you look at the spread between the 5-year and the 30-year, right? Long-term investment provides economic stability, sustainability, and solutions, right? We don't want people investing in the short term because they're going to pull their money out fast, and the company that may be solving real problems may lose that money. The problem, though, is if people fear capricious government or Federal Reserve officials, they won't invest in the long term, but invest only in the short term. The reason why it makes sense right now to only invest in the short term, what is the government going to do next? What is the Federal Reserve going to do next? Now, Greenspan tries to pin it on the fact that there's huge deficits. Some of that is true. In fact, I actually agree with Greenspan on this. Like, yes, the national debt tells me that the government's going to do something wicked in the future. I mean, when I say wicked, I mean they're going to dishonor something, right? Like I point out here, do you see why bailouts threatening to dishonor 529s and 401ks and figuring out other ways to tax people end up hurting the economy? Financial integrity matters, right? Yes, he's right about one thing. These national debts spell a huge problem. They're going to do something, and we're all trying to figure out what it is, so the idea is you don't commit to anything. Problem is, that means long-term, the economy doesn't grow. And long-term, people start getting poorer. That's just it, right? Financial integrity matters. Contrast that with Paul Volcker, right? Greenspan, Bernanke, and Yellen have all contributed, and they're not the only ones, but they've all contributed to this central banking capricious behavior. And has caused investors to lose faith in the long run. Losing faith in the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government, I say, is next. If they continue to behave in this capricious manner, the next thing that's going to happen is nobody's going to have faith in them anymore. And when that happens, hyperinflation. People don't understand. Hyperinflation is a full loss of faith in the currency. Who controls this currency? Well, right now it's the Federal Reserve and the government. What happens when people lose faith in the Federal Reserve and the government? Hyperinflation. The end. Okay? Now, I am not saying that that's going to happen in the next 10 years. I'm not saying that's going to happen in the next 20 years. What I'm saying is, if they continue to behave capriciously, this will eventually happen. Because nobody has faith in the long term. And what that means is people are eventually going to say, okay, that's it. I don't want to take part in this system anymore. I'm pulling everything out. Now, contrast that with Americans hated Paul Volcker. They did. They did not like him at all. Yet he demarcated himself from these other central bankers because he fundamentally understood that establishing financial integrity restores faith in the system. That was the whole point of raising interest rates super high and beating inflation. If you bet against the dollar then, you lost. Okay? Even if it takes a decade or more to do, what people don't understand about Paul Volcker is his policies took a decade to 2 decades to feel. Just like with Greenspan, Bernanke, and Yellen, it's going to take 2 decades to see exactly what this disaster that they've created is going to happen. You don't see that immediately. If I raise interest rates, it's not the immediate effects of that. It's what's going to happen over the next 10 to 20 years. Okay? Finally, I point this out because I don't know why anybody in the U.S. trusts equations and academics, but equations don't mean anything when integrity is broken. So you can keep looking at your equations all day long. When there's no faith in the system, when there's no integrity, it's over. The end. Okay, so my point here and in my argument here, it's just like I made when I was a banker, is that we always must have integrity with our customers. We always must do what's in the best interest because it is good for all of us in the long run. This is why integrity is so important, right? Because when people don't feel like they can trust you, then in the long run, they're not going to go along with whatever you're doing. And like I said, if people lose faith in the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government, when that happens, and that, I'm not saying that's happening in the next 10 years, but if that were to happen, you will see hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is a loss of faith in a currency. It is nothing about printing money, blah, blah. No. Hyperinflation is loss of faith in a currency. And when you lose faith in the Federal Reserve or the U.S. government, there you go. Game over, right? Integrity financially matters. So you can go and you can watch the video with Alan Greenspan, but even he admits this is a big problem. We do not have in the U.S. anymore long-term capital investment. And why do you think that is? I would say fundamentally it's the way the Federal Reserve and our government officials are acting.